Hey folks, MasakoX here, and we are coming to the end of 2023 with this really special little retrospective to some of our classic what if stories. We're gonna go with a rapid fire retrospective and reflection on some of the stories that help shape the channel. And I'm not doing this alone, of course, because with me, as always, is my trusty sidekick Havarok.
Hello.
Yes, so what we're gonna do today is a one very summative piece about what we think of some of the stories that we have shared with the channel. And we are talking about the complete stories that we've done from start to finish in a roundabout fashion, our little thoughts, what we could have done better, what we liked, what we didn't like, that kind of stuff. So, to begin with, we are going to one of the earliest stories, the one that started it all, in my opinion. The first of the long form stories. So we're going with the likes of Kid Goku. What if he went Super Saiyan early? Well, I have managed to do a couple of test stories, initial ones like what if Sensu Beans didn't exist? Or what if Kami and Piccolo had fused early, like in the Saiyan saga, just to test the waters to see what was going on, because we obviously had Dragon Ball Super coming around and those weekly reviews were all well and good, and we had discussions as well. But it was more to do with just having other content because I like telling stories and this seemed like a really good fit. And it was also one of those questions that everybody really wanted to know an answer for. Like, why didn't Goku go Super Saiyan when he saw Krillin dead from the hands of Tambourine? So why not cover that as the first story, the first long form story of multiple parts? And I suppose the reflection that I have in mind is that maybe we should have gone ahead with this going into Z a little bit more, because I did kind of trail it off. That's the main thing I remember from it, is that you get to when he's an adult and I just go, you know what, it's pretty much too similar to what happens in the original. I can't think of anything else. Let's just call it at that, eh? So that's my lingering memory of that. But it was something that became the template for what we did in future stories, and it brought to the channel an idea about what you could expect from multiple format stories. So the next one is one of the first pioneering stories that Hav and I decided to do that were a little bit more loose. The April Fool what ifs. Oh, those are absolute gold. This one is the big boy, Broly turning good.
Yeah, I remember it. The Iron Giant facsimile in the first episode. How many people caught on that? So,
Yeah.
It was kind of funny.
I remember it so well in the sense that that first part, on the first couple of parts, just Broly comes in when Goten and Trunks have just managed to harness the power of Broly, and he just one punches Barbody and destroys the ship. You little potato head man!
The potato head.
Yes, exactly. This is where it all began, and it's something that I take a lot of pride in. Just the fact that, just ending the Boo saga. We have done that in quite a few stories recently, because the Boo saga, there are so many places where it could have just been wrapped up quite nicely, but then there are other events that do tend to get in the way. So that's my enduring memory. And I'm liking the fact that we did explore a lot of things about Broly's mental health, in the sense that he was a ticking time bomb, and Trunks obviously had a lot of things to do with that, but he did come good in the end, and that's something I quite like. Now, another one that I remember being quite a fan favorite, this helped me out a lot in the early days, just going to the fandom and going like, well, what do people want to know? This one is about, what if Vegito stayed fused? And this one, I remember quite well in that I gave Vegito a beard. Just giving him a beard, it just shows the maturity that I have. And just seeing that one clip from Super where Goku and Vegeta have been in the time chamber and they have beards, and it was just like, you know what, let's just do that for Vegito. But I like the fact that we explored the idea of having Vegito evolve and mature, and the enduring memory I have is his battle with Kale, the two massive fusions duking it out in the Tournament of Power. That's something I remember quite nicely. Yeah. It was just another case of like, well, what would happen if they had to accept that there would be no getting out of this? Or at least this was before, I reckon. No, this was just slightly after we found out that you could reverse Potara fusion, thanks to Shin just
Yeah.
using the Dragon Balls. And when I found that out with Shin, they just go, oh, we just used the Dragon Balls to defuse. What? Just such a cop out. Like it just completely negated the stakes and the tension. But hey, Dragon Ball is no stranger to low stakes.
And
right?
later on, we learned, about the whole ordeal with non-Kais involved in the fusion.
Absolutely.
And like this one, like we still get in the comments, continue this one, after all those years.
I know. But at the same time, it's just we can't just keep continuing
Yeah.
every single story. Otherwise, we wouldn't get new ones in. Especially this next one, which I believe is Hav's pride and joy.
Oh
It's what if Goku defeated Roshi. But it has gone under many different name changes in the sense that we just gotta, the YouTube algorithm,
Yep.
It just absolutely, it's not forgiving in some senses. But yeah, so this one I really did like in that it was a really good notion about, well, this is an important lesson for Goku. If he never learnt it, then this would change Dragon Ball entirely, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and it's like some people didn't took it kindly for it portraying Goku as more as a jerk, but I think that like Goku is if Goku is a jerk in the original or in the other stories, he's an unwilling jerk. Like it wasn't an evil Goku story per se, but we wanted to, make a story where not everything was going as Goku would have wanted, Because a lot of things in the original is like whatever Goku does, it always goes his way in the end. And like I thought a good vehicle for that would be Tien, right? Because if Goku experiences his first loss with Tien, who, let's be honest, originally wasn't the nicest of guys, it could kinda break him.
Well, yeah, I really like that addition. Tenshin Han, he is the guy that specifically wants to beat Goku. Of course, this is an insurmountable task come the Saiyan saga or even earlier than that. The 23rd tournament just made it clear that Tenshin Han would never be as strong as Goku.
Yeah.
But didn't stop him from trying.
Yep.
So to have him as the actual rival to Goku in that story was perfect.
And the funny thing was that it was more Goku being a rival for Tien in that story, because Tien was like, he didn't really hated Goku, but Goku became obsessed.
I can see him being absolutely frustrated. And that's the thing. A lot of the Dragon team were just frustrated with Goku, just being this stubborn and unwilling to change his attitude. And that was carried out throughout the entire piece. That was great.
Yeah, I like the minor things, like all the Saiyans surviving. Like this is the timeline where we have all three, Saiyans turning good.
An excuse to keep Raditz.
Vegeta's story was like cemented long before. Like I wanted him to be a bit of a, dark reflection of Goku. I always knew that this story will end up on Vegeta being the final body.
Absolutely. It does seem like a really good kind of matchup.
Yeah.
The next one that we want to cover is another one about what if future Gohan survived. Now, this is, again, another one that the community was asking for the longest time. And the simplest thing I had in mind was that this is something that we really need to consider, that there is the complete vagary regarding the lookout. Is it still there? Did the androids find it? Probably not, because they wouldn't have known about it. Dr. Giro wouldn't have known about it. So this is something that I took into consideration. It's just like, well, if Gohan just had the brainwave of going, hey, is the lookout still there? Why don't we just go up there and take a look before we try and go against the androids again? And then maybe Mr. Popo could then eventually just tell them about the time chamber. They can then use it. And I think they would get around the whole mental scarring that the time chamber goes through because, well, it's not that much better down on the planet. So just do that and then go from there. And it's just another excuse to have Gohan with a robotic arm. That's always cool. Robotic arms are always cool. Turns up a lot in our stories.
Yeah, like I was always a little bit salty that we rarely use the mental scarring of the time chamber. So that was nice, that was nice to at least address, because many stories gloss over it, like super glosses over it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, well, the thing is, though, Dende, they just took out all the peril in it. And the fact, like, oh, you can stay there for as long as you want. Oh, you're not going to get stuck in there. It's fine. And it's just water off a duck's back now, whereas before it used to be just genuinely a hardship. That's still a Vegeta encased in fire, screaming. It was just that was hardcore. But it's not like that anymore. It's just
Yeah.
like that's a shame that that kind of has been lost to time. Yeah. But another one that hasn't been lost to time is the idea of collaboration through nefarious purposes. Now, if there's one thing that Super did get right, is the addition of very high end angelic or deity like characters screwing around with the timeline. And that is the case of with What If Frieza and Jiro teamed up.
Yeah.
Now, this story, it was just like these two really intelligent beings in various different capacities joining forces and then realizing that they got played hard. And then you just think, could they actually work together? Not really.
This is
But
also
it is
the first story that we wrote that had a spin-off as well.
Yes, exactly. It did have that spin-off of what if Android 16 and Broly met
Yeah.
up and they got to learn each other's foibles, and they're both big boys. So we wanted to have two big boys duking it out
Yeah.
in terms of being friends and then just like, because that's what they needed. They needed a companion. They needed like some sort of camaraderie. That was something that I really took pride in.
Yep.
And that was a really good story. The next one I really want to tackle is what if Trunks met Kid Bulma? This was a good one. This was
Yeah.
a good one. Definitely. Because it's so easy for Trunks to just slip back too hard in that time machine. It's an experimental device. They've never tested it before. And well, who's to say that he would have just got the date wrong and then ended up meeting Goku, but just right at the beginning of his story when he met Bulma. And then he can't go back. And he was already having that awkward tension with Bulma when she was grown up around the time of Z. So if you put Trunks, who's older than his mother at that point in the story, in age 750, it's just going to make things all the more awkward for both of them when Bulma would find out the truth. And then, of course, Trunks goes mad with power because he is lawful good Trunks. But if you had that situation where he would go back in time, and there is no question he would be the strongest being on the planet by miles and for many years, this is something that he could truly change the story instead of in the original Z, where he could just give Goku the tools to help out, and then they have to deal with it from there. And then he can maybe help out in some capacity. Here, he can dictate the story, and as we know, this old adage, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's exactly what happened. And I went deeply hard into this in the sense that his punishment was total. And Cronoa, we're used to seeing Cronoa as happy-go-lucky, easygoing, but she's the supreme Kai of time. And sometimes she needs to dole out the punishment. He got off easy in the original Xenoverse lore in that, Trunks was meant to be punished, but then Cronoa gave him a job instead. And that's how he got Time Patrol Trunks. Here, though, I don't think she would be that forgiving because he would have been messing around with the time streams extremely. So that's what I kind of went for, that you almost have to be quite cyclical. But speaking of a cyclical story, I think one of the most genius stories on the channel is What If Zamasu Did Nothing Wrong?
Thank you. I have a very clear image from the very beginning. Like, I have vivid memories of writing, like the Dekraf Zamasu conversation that they had in, on Babari when Dekraf discovered that he cannot die, it's like it's like poetry. It rhymes, as George Lucas would say, har har har. And additionally, like, I am still very proud that nobody has figured out the name puns for the Babari.
And I think that's a challenge to people to go back to that story. You just search for it and go and look for it, because I remember you told me, but I've since forgotten.
Yeah.
So I think I remember, and I remember being very impressed with what you chose. For anybody who gets it, I think you will very much appreciate that. And one thing that I really wanted to appreciate a bit more was the idea of the influence of Whis. And This is one that kind of went under the radar. It started off strong, but it kind of faded away. But it is one of those stories where it does kind of fade away naturally. But it's the idea of Broly being raised by Beerus and Whis, because what's becoming quite clear in the lore of superhero is that this kid is going to be lined up as Beerus's candidate to become the next god of destruction of Universe 7. Because everyone wants it to be Goku or Vegeta, but Vegeta's development is making it very obvious that he's not going to do that. He's got his family. He would never. I mean, if this were Vegeta, say, back in the Android saga, he would take this with open arms. He would, no question, want to be the god of destruction. Yeah, destruction, eh? I'm listening. And we didn't get that. But this idea of Whis just finding out about Broly's power at this stage where it's completely untested and he is so innocent and he can easily take him. Paragus would just be left alone. This is something I know a lot of people really didn't like, but not in a bad way, but they just were like, oh, Mars, wow, that's dark even for you. Because I sometimes like to make my characters, I like to torment them sometimes, just really take them through the ringers in order for them to gain some sense of self-discovery. This time around, though, this was quite heavy because we just left Paragus there on Vampa, no memory of even having a son. He just exists, and we never go back to that again. And Broly never finds out the truth. And I think even if he does, there's nothing really he can do about it, unless he wants to destroy Vampa and put his father out of his misery, because his father would never remember him. And the way that Whis would do it, he would never remember him no matter what you did. But anyway, the fact that I wanted to explore Broly being trained up to become the god of destruction, and that it would be a sense of like, he would be tough but fair. He's a very intelligent person, Broly. And if you apply him in a way that really instills his confidence, his natural ability and potential, he would be a very just destroyer in that he would be much fairer than Beerus. But mind you, being better than Beerus in terms of being a destroyer, that's not exactly saying much, is it? Really.
Yeah.
Because Beerus he is the laziest cat out there in space. So it would take a lot of convincing for people not to consider Broly being the best destroyer. And that's something I really wanted to explore. It didn't do well in terms of metrics and stuff, but I'm glad that I made it.
Which is kind of weird because it's Broly. Like, Broly
I know.
Usually the good, right?
I know, but sometimes the premises don't necessarily gel well with people.
Maybe it wasn't believable enough.
Because then we talk about Bardock the Believable. That's it. So this is what if Bardock convinced the Saiyans. And I remember making this one back in like 2017, and I did not expect it to become this grandiose. Just the simple idea of like, hey, what if Bardock went into that cantina and was able to convince some people, not all of them, because trying to convince every single Saiyan, that would be practically impossible. But instead of him being just laughed out of the room, how about if some people just went, hey, you think you're serious? And then they actually follow him. And he then obviously gets proven right. He then becomes the guardian of the Saiyans. He then gets to meet up with Goku. He then is able to panel beat Vegeta into shape. And then they go after Frieza. And then we also got mega jacked up Nappa being the ultimate minion of Frieza and exploring the Saiyan Queen. Now, this is something I really like, and I liked exploring a lot the idea of cassava, because cassava is a tuber in terms of a vegetable. That is a very obscure one, certainly. But I'm glad that I was able to do it, just explore part of what Vegeta's personality came from. And to have cassava was so cool. Yeah. And I loved messing with people at the end, just to imply that, wait, they had a kid? You can't just stop it there, Masako. They're having a kid. Goku's gonna be a half-brother. Why did you end it there? Well, I just thought, this is one of those stories where I want it to be open-ended, because the story for the Saiyans in that Y universe, it could be just open-ended. Just, the future is completely boundless. They can then forge out their destiny with a new bunch of Saiyans and just a new way of thinking. And a new way of thinking could be the idea of what we're going to talk about next, is the idea of Goku just missing Mount Paozu a little bit and landing in West City. And this one is the linchpin in a lot of weird stuff that's been going on the channel lately, wouldn't you say, Have?
Yeah. Like I knew that this one is going to be crazy. Like we couldn't just just make him the same Goku and just adjust it. Lean into the more fanficky part and make it a core of a certain project that it's slowly unveiling on the channel. But like aside from the basics, like like involving a lot of characters, which I admit I think at the time I could juggle better because there's a lot of characters. There's Mark, there's Lunch, there's we have Zarbon and Dodoria who survived. Like there is this enormous cast of characters that's being prepared for something, right? And also there's Perfection, which is one of our very few channel original villains. And I wanted to kinda make it kinda like what if Cell and the baby were one being, but at the other time, like at the other hand, make it a very like make them their own person and make them a villain that Dragon Ball hasn't seen before. Basically, what if you had an evil pacifist?
Yeah, because most people, upon first glance, just thought that Perfection was just a baby clone, but it goes much deeper,
Yeah.
definitely.
We haven't
And
seen them showing up the full extension of their
no,
powers and why Nomad is so terrified of them.
yeah, exactly. Even though this is an ongoing story still,
Yeah.
this is definitely something we want to discuss because it's been going on for a long time and it is a very important part of where the stories go on the channel.
Yep.
So, just keep an eye out for that because you might see it trickling into other stories and other videos on the channel.
Speaking of, weird Goku situations, like you have one that you collaborated with.
Definitely. What if Goku was female? Now this one was a loaded bullet. Well, no, loaded gun initially because it was just like, well, how do I tackle this reasonably and tactfully? I feel like I could do it much better on my own now, having figured out and learnt what I already learned. But at that time, I genuinely did not have the confidence in which to pull it off without, talking to people who would understand or would get it. So I ran by that script towards loads of the wonders of the female talent of R&R, and I'm so grateful for that. Just to have that just sense of just that reflection and just bouncing ideas off just to make sure that what I was doing was sound, it was logical, it didn't resort to fan service, it was genuine. So fortunately, it turned out that way, and I'm really glad that it did because it was a story where I just really wanted it to just play off the idea that characters, just because they're female, doesn't mean that you really have to define that character as being female. You just want to get that character sorted out first. That's why with Ranch would work no matter what gender they identified as or presented themselves as. You just need to want to have a good character, right? Just have a character that you like. They just so happen to be this time female. That might change things further down the line in terms of sense of story, but the original core persona of that being is the same. So if Goku were female, it would still be Goku. Just so happens to be having different anatomy. And having Bulma is there, that does show some sense of influence because at the time, Bulma is quite the girly girl. And that, that changes as she grows up. But at the age of 16, and when she first meets Goku, there is that really obvious fact that, yes, Bulma is quite feminine, and that does change. But she is also incredibly intelligent, remarkable. That doesn't diminish because the Bulma character, that's very obvious. Engineer, very proud, very stubborn, but also a genius and remarkable. And that's reflected no matter what gender they are. And just having that guiding light with Bulma, that was really cool. Just to see that character from a different perspective, because we already know what she's like with a male Goku. What's she like with a female Goku? Just to explore that path.
Yeah.
That was really cool to do.
Yeah, like why the series is generally liked, I feel that there is one particular design that we are getting pretty hard time. And that's Perfect Celine.
Oh well, I'm still standing by that. And people have gotten used to it. That people have gotten they're over that initial shock value. But, well, as the DBZA lot pointed out, Frieza with Bobs, we're just doing the same thing with Cell. Just like Dr. Giro, a pervy old man, and Goku, the one that completely destroyed the Red Ribbon headquarters, completely would model off that in a very different way. But then Celine becomes this, it is built differently in the sense that all that Celine wanted to do was to prove herself. Just prove herself in a way of just being able to be with the Breakfast Club of Combat, because she's made up of that club. So naturally, that camaraderie would have been in her DNA. So why not? That would just be, she wants to join the club. That's the conclusion that all of the DNA and all of those personalities mixed together comes up with in her mind. Just to go, I just want to prove yourself that I'm worthy of being part of your team. Because I am the living representative and the combination of your team anyway. So that's something I found really cool. It's just like, I like playing around with Cell's personality. And I feel like we'll talk about this in a different story later on, but this is just one of the only examples I'm really proud of where Cell's personality is different, but not that different. It's very subtle, and you'll find that out later on. So continuing on with our little retrospective, we've got to go to another classic story that the origins of this were actually almost a little bit of a, oh yeah, well, two can play at that game, wasn't it, Have?
Yeah, like, fun fact, that was the first episodic story I wrote for the channel. Like, the first What If that I wrote was What If Gohan was Earth's hero, but this one was like, I don't want to say spite, but, like...
Well, let's just say motivated inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah, the context being is that I believe it was Grant and Lanny doing a thing, and they mentioned the What If stories on the channel. And they would say, let me guess, what if Nappa turned good? And we both looked at each other and were like, why don't we just do that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, we've had a couple of bits of inspiration from Team 4-Star.
Yeah.
Whenever they've made little pokings of fun. It's all in good jest, really. But the idea of Nappa is that we just took some of the tropes that we saw from the anime and thought, you know what, let's just extrapolate that. Like, for example, we just looked at the fact that he grew Cybermen. It's like, why don't he just be a gardener?
Yeah.
Let's just do that. Why not?
Yeah, like this one was, the longer I think about it, and the longer I think back, this one was our first experiment one, really. Like, like, when I pitched to you, we won't be having a future Trunks here, what about future Nappa? And nowadays, when we go with those ideas, you are like, okay, but then we are like, I don't know, like, this was us being, pretty strict about the rules, if you remember.
Yeah,
correctly.
no, this was like, I think this was very early on when we were just like trying to find our groove with storytelling.
Yeah.
Like, I think this was like still like 2017.
Yeah.
And we were like just still pushing we're not quite pushing the boundaries, but we just wanted to make sure that we were all kind of understanding what we wanted to do. And we just felt like, and also we hadn't been doing Tournament of Power 25 times. So
yeah,
we were still relatively keen just to kind of keep it as strict as possible. But as we progressed, as you'll see with some of our other stories, we do tend to, we want to experiment. We like to try different things out, but without going too far off the rails. But Nappa was definitely one of those that we went on for a very long time, but we did experience a lot of things, including, for once, having a romantic partner that they don't necessarily have to have children.
Oh, yeah. And the idea actually didn't come from us, by the way, but from AB. I hope they are still going by AB.
Yeah, but I believe so. But yeah, no, it was a really good idea and a really nice inclusion.
Yeah. Because originally, sorry that I interrupted. Originally, I didn't plan to give Nappa any romantic relationship. I wanted to, to write him as, hey, you can be a fulfilled person without pursuing, romantic goals. But like this, like this also allowed us to explore something that's rarely explored, which is like, like a little bit of elderly romance, honestly.
Yeah, it's like based primarily on companionship.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, instead of just having it doesn't have to be romance and all of that stuff. It can just be, just want a friend, just someone to be with, just like look after and everything like that. So I'd say that was one of our grand stories as well. And the next one is definitely similar to that of what if Goku married Bulma?
Oh
What if Goku
boy.
married Bulma? Oh, now this is one of those ones that it starts off good. It goes through many ebbs and flows, and let's just, it's all very well and good. I'm quite proud with what we did in terms of like Gohan and all that stuff. But it all came down to asunder with part 17.
I
Part
mean,
17, that's gone down in infamy in
you
terms of
watched Marvel's What If. Like, come on.
I did.
Come
I
on.
did. And
Yeah.
I went too far.
I was like,
I think
when you
I
gave
talked
me-
to you about
when-
this.
Yeah, when you gave me that, I was like, okay, like this is interesting. Like I still was, and you may be angry at me in the comments, people, but like I was like, you should stick to your own guns. You know, like I was, and admittedly, I'm still not with changing the ending, but you know, like many people appreciated it.
Yeah, I mean, even then, it's just sort of, it's not getting rid of it entirely.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's why the Grand Priest is so good in these stories. All you have to do is just like, you know, just do a do-over, and then the Grand Priest will just solve all your problems.
Call the angel.
Yeah, exactly. It's deliberately written by Dragon Ball Super because the angels, they can do what they want. It's absolutely fine. But no, certainly, I did like the idea because Goku marrying Bulma was just such an obvious answer to a problem that the fans had had, because you just saw at one point in Dragon Ball that Bulma almost did pursue Goku when he'd grown up, like saw him in a different light, but Bulma didn't choose to pursue it when it became clear that, you know, it was Chi-Chi that was going to want to be his bride. So it was just something, well, how about if she was just selfish and just decided to go for it? So it was just answering a very big question that the fandom had. And yeah, quite clearly, I had been watching Marvel's What If, and that episode really left an impact with me, and I decided to do it my own way. I mean, I do like to torment my characters sometimes, but I think maybe this was one that went a little bit overboard. But I suppose one that I kind of was a little bit more reserved on was What If Gine? That one is a fan favorite on the channel.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. And it's one of those ones I'm really proud of because Gine had just come onto the scene in Broly. And she made an everyone liked her from the Broly movie. Even though people had seen her in Dragon Ball Minus, people didn't really pay attention to Minus at the beginning because people just didn't care for it. But when Broly came around, it just cemented, yep, Gine is definitely canon. Yeah. So yeah, she does definitely exist. She's not just in a side manga. Yeah. But you know, I just felt like this was a good story.
It is interesting, sorry, how many people, you know, like do not like the new interpretations of Bardock, which, you know, we like to argue if they are as new as people think. But like I haven't seen many people who don't like Gine. Like Gine was an instant hit with people.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. And with this one, it was just a case of just, well, why didn't she just, you know, her butt saved the day by basically she was just putting Goku in and then she just got knocked into the pod and then just like, okay, you're going with Goku now. Or technically, it's always been Kakarot.
Yep.
But this story is just that, I mean, she, for the most part, she just wants to be an observer, but she can't help the fact that she is the strongest being on Earth for a very long time. Like for a good 20 years. 20 years plus as well. It's only until Raditz shows up, and luckily he's on their side, that you actually see, you know, Gine getting to actually realize, hey, I'm not a weakling. I can do some good. And just having that moment. But the standout moment for me is that her impact on Perfect Cell.
Oh, yeah.
Because Perfect Cell in this version is a lot more honorable, as in like fair and reasonable and just a little bit more just. So I wouldn't say Cell's no good guy, absolutely not. But he's certainly respecting rules and not being like, oh, I'm just going to flout them because it's no longer in my favor. So he's very much more of a stickler. And just that moment when they were fighting and then Gine, I think, did succumb to it, is that, but Cell was like, that was a good fight. I respect that. He shows more respect. That's it.
Yeah.
Just in a non-Saiyan-y way, sort of like a hybrid Earth, that kind of stuff. And then this was another one that I was really quite liking, of what if Vegeta never turned good? Now this one, because this was getting to the point where everyone was like going, oh, Masako, all you do is turn good stories. Well, okay, how about I just turn this on the heads and just say, what if they didn't turn good? Oh, I mean, this one's pretty cut and dry, really. There's not really much to explain. This wasn't, I would say this wasn't one of my more stories. This was just pretty much cut and dry. If Vegeta wasn't good, he probably would be an empire builder or something like that. To do with the Saiyan race or a mishmash of different species doesn't really matter. He would become an emperor and be a thorn in the side of Earth. So, not really much else to say about that, really. But it was just nice to explore Vegeta in a different way, kind of. Yeah, that we don't really have to worry about his redeeming qualities. We could just, see him somehow become more honorable and less of a sneak than he can be sometimes. So it was a really nice way to kind of just like delve deep into that. But again, it's not really one I hold highly in regard, but I'm glad that I did it. But one I do hold in high regard is the Christmas Miracle one year that we did of what if Videl turned good.
I think that was the first Christmas Miracle one, right?
I think that might have been. No, Frieza. That was Frieza.
Frieza was the first
Frieza,
one? Original one?
Yeah, that was 2019, and then the following year was Videl.
Okay,
Actually, I've lost track.
Yeah.
I've lost track, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Bardock was last year. Chi-Chi was the year before that. Videl, Videl was the second one.
Okay.
That was that. Yeah, that was to establish that, this is going to be a thing now.
Yeah, I think
with Videl,
I think this one is the one when people think about our Christmas Miracle ones, though.
Yes, and that was the one that we collaborated on with Sophie. And Sophie's input on this was incredibly useful, especially at the beginning, just to kind of, make sure that the the tension between Gohan and Videl felt a bit more grounded, and it meant that we kind of didn't get over exaggerated in some points, but we still wanted to impress, mainly for the fact that I was just wanting to have a story of Dragon Ball where Videl doesn't get bodied by Spopovich.
Yeah, and
that was my main motivation.
She kicks Popovich's butt.
Exactly. And she doesn't become the strongest human for a long time. She does eventually. But mainly, she just is able to hold her own in the Buu Saga primarily, and just is more of a factor and more of like a support role for Gohan, as well as being strong in her own right. Definitely something I was really proud of getting to do. And it did set up the trope that we have had people in the comments ever since, because we did that, then we did Chi-Chi, and everyone going, when are you going to do launch?
Yeah, shout out to Crisis of Infinite Darts.
Yes.
You, mate. Someday.
Somehow.
Yeah.
We will get to it.
Yeah.
But it's definitely one of those stories I'm really proud that we touched upon, because it meant that Videl got her dues. And Superhero has been able to rewrite that somewhat for a positive manner. The fact that she is a martial arts instructor and that she has her own dojo, or at least she has a job.
Yep.
And she does put her skills to good use, which is nice. So she's not just a stay-at-home mother, although there isn't anything wrong if that's what she chooses to do, if that's her choice. But I'm glad that she has some connection to martial arts still. That's nice.
So to the best of my memory, the Videl What If was something that was born primarily, as many things were, from our lamentations over the wasted potential that was going around Dragon Ball Super with the human characters in general and Videl in particular. Now, this was a few years ago, so I couldn't honestly say what specific event spawned it, but we got to talking and we wound up coming up with the whole what if Videl was a Z fighter, proper idea later. And obviously, you have to play catch-up when you got a bunch of human characters and stuff like that, so you wind up relying on, the Room of Spirit and Time. Not our favorite method to go about doing it, but it's really the only really useful option Akira Toriyama has provided. Apart from, later on we would learn, you can just wish your potential on the Dragon Balls, especially the Super Dragon Balls with granola and stuff like that. But the key aspects of the what if Videl was a Z fighter thing that I really enjoyed, and that I know that we all kind of got a real kick out of over the course of developing the what if, was her getting into her the meat of her relationship with Gohan early, because it created a very good dynamic between the two of them, getting her onto an even keel footing with all of the other guys, especially since Videl very in canon she has the most potential of any human character bar none. The sheer speed with which she learns flight is proof positive enough of that. So you've got her catching up. You get her getting in there to get her relationship with Gohan really developed nice and early, which allowed for Gohan having his little Majin stint for a much shorter period than Vegeta, but it was still a nice little fun switcheroo. Always nice when you're able to do fun stuff like that, which was great. And then, of course, I think just about everyone's favorite to come out of the What If Videl was a Z Fighter bit was Vizuli and Adele, which of course were the fusions between Videl and 18, both the Metamori fusion dance and the Potara fusion earring stuff. And that's a character I think everybody appreciates. Videl and 18 getting to evolve this kind of friendship and stuff over the course of the What If was really fantastic and amazing. And just generally, I think her presence being this larger factor in both like Gohan's life specifically, but also the Z Fighters in general, really does let you play with the universe a bit in some interesting ways. Not the least of which was also us playing along with like, hey, you know, what would be Goku's version of hell? Oh, him not being able to get any stronger. And so we wound up going with the whole Goku is the one who gets his potential unleashed by Old Kai, which was a great little bit while it lasted prior to going into all of like the Dragon Ball Super shenanigans. But yeah, that's just kind of my general thoughts on the What If Videl was a Z Fighter What If. Really a fond memory. I hadn't thought about it because, you know, it's been 3 years or whatever since we did the whole thing, but definitely one of my favorites and has created some really, really memorable moments for MasakoX's channel and just, I think, Dragon Ball AU What If free across the board.
And an honorable mention has to certainly be It's the Good Boy 21.
Oh yeah. It's still not over, but we decided, you know, it would be weird if we didn't talk about it.
Yeah, just to at least touch upon it briefly. Just the idea of just like Bulma, instead of destroying the embryonic cell that's in Jiro's lab in the present, in the sub-lab, sorry, there is a difference, it's just to mainly just have that chance to see, well, what would have happened if, you know, nature versus nurture primarily. Yeah, to kind of just see what could happen if you just allowed this cell to develop with some more Capsule Corp influence and be a force for good and be also very, very good at hugs. That was primarily, he's a hugging bug.
Yep.
Primarily.
And also, you know, like I got a lot of, you know, really nice comments about Maita, which a lot of people read as a proper trans character, which was like, you know, one of the first in our What Ifs, you know. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, both of those characters, you know, they're just so good. And it's just lovely to see Cell have a family that aren't just a bunch of Cell juniors who are out for blood. You know, he can have children. Just a case of like, they just mainly travel. That's primarily what they do. Like, whenever you get like some downtime, we're always writing, and then Cell, Maita, and Condra traveled the world for a while. So they have excellent vacations.
Yeah. This is also the one that has a lot of fan art. Like when I'm in bad mood, I always look up for the fan art.
Yeah, of course. And we did touch upon because everyone was going, are you going to give him like a gold Frieza form?
Yeah.
We gave him bronze Cell because it was mainly, I don't want to show off too much.
Yeah.
And another little dig at Frieza.
Also, shout outs to the Bura thing. I really enjoyed doing the Bura thing there.
Oh yes, the inner monologue.
Yeah.
And the drinking of Dabura in part 3. Yeah. That was fun. And also, you know, you are what you eat or you are what you drink. Then, okay, this one is something this is probably the What If story I'm proud of the least. In fact, no, I actually probably don't like what I did with it. And probably if I could go back and do it again, I would. What if Vegeta was the first Super Saiyan? I went too bold with this one. Like, too bold to the point of like, yeah, this was not making any sense by the end of it. And it mainly stemmed from the fact I delved deep into Majin Goku. Like, I wanted to have Goku being twisted by resentment from Vegeta that Barbary manages to harness onto it, and eventually we get Majin Goku. And then in a moment of clarity, he ends up sacrificing himself in Super Saiyan 3, and then it's just like, it goes from there. It started off relatively rational, but I felt like it wasn't really going anywhere, so I felt like I'd try something like experimental. Didn't quite work out that way. So
I mean, such is the thing
Um,
with experiments, right? And this
yeah,
was one of the earliest experiments, so you cannot be too harsh on it.
well, no, it started off fine, but it was only after I'd left it alone for about a couple of years when I just suddenly went like, I need to come up with something. I thought I knew what I was doing with this one. And probably if I went back, I would probably do it again and keep to the original groove that I had from part 3. But it ended with Vegeta being the god of destruction, which is not a far-fetched thing. It's definitely feasible. Less feasible now than it was maybe a few years ago, but it's not out of the realms of impossibility. But yeah, definitely one that I would go back and redo if I could. Now, okay, we got to talk about the big one here. What if Raditz?
Oh yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, this one's a channel legacy. Yeah, Raditz. It's got to that point now where I go on Twitter almost every other month or so, and then it's like another day and another moment that people just say that I completely just made Raditz way too popular.
Yeah.
Just like people going, why is Raditz so popular? Blame Masako. I was like, I'm not ashamed.
Yeah,
I'm not ashamed.
Like we had a lot of fun with this character, and obviously, like he never really meant to have that much, that big of a role. Like it's a cultural thing, but I think it was pretty fun with what we did, and like like it's spinning out into like it builds a lot of the channel identity, and we met a lot of very talented, very passionate people thanks to this what if like I think it will always have a special place in both of our hearts, and like and I still think that Ranch is our best received OC so far.
I would say so, of course, without a doubt. Ranch is definitely that MVP of the channel.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. All of the people that we've worked with on and off and on various little things, they've been absolutely amazing and remarkable, and they've gone on to do really incredible things. Yeah. And it's just all stemming from the fact that we all just thought Raditz should really get his act together in a story. And it's just one of those stories where we just thought, well, Raditz being there would be such a great enhancer of Goku learning more about his Saiyan heritage in a much more casual way, instead of Vegeta just doing it in many monologues and doing it in a very reluctant manner and almost resentful. But Kakarot, surely you would know about this. But yeah, as we did in episode 5, Raditz would just go on for hours and then maybe sort of misremember and really explore some vulnerabilities there.
Yeah, fun fact, while the main core of the story was basically 100% you, I wrote the GT section. GT Super Mix, which I did with where we kind of rebuilt the Shadow Dragon stuff, the lesser remembered sequel to What If Raditz, let's say.
Well, technically, it's still in the full story version, so everyone can get to see it. Yeah. So that's that. And then, of course, there's this that carries on with Revelation F. What if Frieza turned good?
That was our no for so many years.
Yeah, no, we resisted that for years. Yeah. And then we thought, well, you know what? Let's just try it out and see what we could do. And I actually, truth be told, got a little bit of inspiration for when Totally Not Mark was going through his One Piece reviews. And it was about exploring deeply about how Nami became a Straw Hat and was slowly opening herself up to Luffy. And I kind of got inspiration from that with how Frieza's character would evolve, in that finally being able to willingly ask for help from other people. So not being afraid to. Yeah. And of course, it was a very gradual one, because at first, Frieza wouldn't get this overnight. And this is something we've reflected on with Cooler, this is a slow burner. This is something that's not going to happen overnight. It has to be through hard graft and through strife. For a long time, Frieza is a drifter. Yep. And has to make his way around the galaxy, trying to find means. And luckily, him being in his fourth form for the most part, and in his mecha form, which is partially fourth form, no one really knows what he looks like. So he can go incognito. And over time, he meets up with Kit. He finds Chilai in a bar. And then they eventually get to Earth, and Yamcha takes a fancy to him thanks to all of the stuff that Fighters wrote. Thank you. And we then get this motley crew. They come up against King Cold's third prodigy, the maddest of them all, Trojan. And it's just, I'm just really proud of that story. And we have explored this in Revelation F a little bit more. And we will come up with a conclusion we're quite happy with. But yeah, it was just nice to have that final thing that we were resisting for so long because we weren't quite sure how we would do it, and we managed to make it work.
Yeah. And also, what I really like about it, like I like to talk about the story, that in this case, because we have a Revelation F, which is a direct sequel, like by the end of the What If, Frieza is at the beginning of his journey of proper redemption. He's still
Yes.
selfish. He cares about his crew, but like it's still a little bit selfish. Like there is a lot of like I love when people catch up onto this in Revelation F, that like Frieza isn't completely good guy yet. He's less evil. Like he learned to care about other people than himself, but like he's still in process. Like Frieza in Revelation F isn't a complete character.
Well, isn't that like in episode 4, the line, I may have changed my ways, but that doesn't mean that I'm a nice guy.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
So he's more redeemable, but he's not nice. He can be cruel. It's just he picks and chooses whether it's when to be nice instead of being nasty all the time.
Yep.
So he can rationalize. Yeah. Then we got this one when a character couldn't rationalize. What if Yamcha? This was an April Fool one.
Oh yeah, this idea came from Jay the Real McCoy, and it's basically a Deadpool kills Marvel universe, but with Yamcha and with wholesome ending.
Yeah, nice and simple, really. Not much to say,
Yeah.
but it's just a case of Yamcha being done of being the butt monkey of Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
And he discovers from another dimension that he's a joke.
He's a meme.
And
yeah.
he's a meme. He discovers what happens in the real world, and he's like, I'm sick and tired of this.
Yeah.
And then eventually he just goes like,
Yeah.
wow, okay. But then, as you say, it does have a very wholesome ending. But if you want to go and take a look at it for yourself, what if Yamcha destroyed the universe? It's a nice little 50-minute story.
Yep.
And it does give Yamcha a nice redeemable end.
Yep.
I would say. Another one that has a nice redeemable end that I'm really proud of, and I included a nice little epilogue in the full story version, was Goku meeting Bardock. Now, this is something...
Yeah.
This was another fan favorite that many people had wanted to see. And I remember the first time I heard of this was in a burst limit, right at the end of the game, that I believe Bardock briefly thinks that he's met his son, but is not quite sure. So there's some sort of disconnect. But then I was thinking, well, okay, how could Bardock meet Goku? We did explore it in a couple of other means, like what if Raditz went to Earth instead of Goku? Bardock turns up at Fortune Teller Barber's place. But in this one, when Pycon and Goku were defending themselves with Frieza and stuff like that, so Bardock didn't get involved. So he gets to be in the Otherworld tournament as a thank you or something. But then he just gets to meet Goku, then he gets to be alive again. Then he decides he doesn't really like being alive anymore. That is really not for him anymore. And he finds Guinea. There's a nice little adventure about will they, won't they? And yeah, it's just a nice little exploration of Bardock getting a second chance and realizing that he doesn't need it.
And showing that he's not, like it's not that easy to reconnect Goku and Bardock, because they are two very different people. Like the two characters that I'm really proud of how we wrote them was Vegeta and Goten.
Yes,
Goten is amazing in this one.
Oh, Goten in this, we finally gave him an identity, and like there's that moment when he's in the cave and Bardock's trying to push him away, and like Goten's like, you suck. It's like, wow, okay, Goten, where'd you get that mouth? And so you just get this moment when Goten's like really annoyed that his grandfather's turned out to be this total jerk. And eventually Bardock does end up working on it. And he does end up training Goten, because Goten won't go away until he does.
I mean, it's opposite. Like, it's Goten training Bardock.
Yeah, and Goten gets some training, of course, and some direct training from Bardock, which is always good. So you always get those moments. And then he does get to meet his great-granddaughter in Pan. So that's a nice little connection.
Yeah.
And I remember in the epilogue that he gets to meet her again later on, which is something that I thought was a really nice way to end it.
Yep.
But yeah, go and watch it. It got a huge surge last year because it was like, I think it got up to like 700,000 views.
On an almost 3 hour video, we were like...
Yeah. That's crazy. Bonkers.
I mean, you know, you put Bardock anywhere and basically you get it. But we were like, okay,
That-
all right. Like spoilers. Neither of us is a like big Bardock fan. It's not like we hate him. We just think that this character is kind of. But
Yeah,
like, but you know, we knew that you guys liked him, so we wanted to make an interesting story. But we didn't expect it to explode like this.
No, with this Bardock, we kind of made him a mixture of the Z version and the Broly version.
Yeah.
We kind of gave him a mixture of the two. That's what we tend to do with Bardock. We tend to kind of just combine the two.
Yep.
Like, he's still the badass of Z, but at the same time, we don't just make him completely soft. He's still the renegade, but he can have the capability of having a sensitive side.
Yep.
Then we got to talk about this one. This was a short and sweet one for me. Is what if Goku Black turned good? It's very simple, very straightforward, but I'm glad that I wrote it. In the sense of like, well, what would have happened if Goku Black listened to that instinctive feeling? Because I remember that there was this one little bit of dialogue where Goku Black was like, I can feel this passion for fighting inside of me. It's like my body wants me to fight, like to train. I was like, imagine that. Like Goku's instinct somehow remains in his body and starts to pollute Zamasu's mind inside Goku's body.
I mean, to be fair, everyone was thinking that, they are setting something up in the anime, like Black would go against Zamasu, but nope.
Yeah. Nope, that didn't happen. And, I mean, there was another story I briefly wrote. I didn't want to touch upon it here. It was like, what if Goten was Goku Black? Just that moment of, like, being twisted. But I like the idea of, like, this Goku Black just suddenly wanted to redeem himself and would help out the Dragon Team in some way in making sure that Zamasu's plan wouldn't go to fruition. So it was nice to kind of like just briefly touch upon that in some way, just to kind of, it was scratching an itch for me. And another scratch that I've yet to completely itch is one that we're going to wrap up with, Yajirobe. I've only written 2 parts.
It is fascinating because it does really bad with the algorithm. But like so many people ask about it, it's like it's paradoxical almost, It seems to be a cult classic within our fandom, but like it never does very well.
I know, that's the thing. It gets a lot of positive feedback from the audience, but then whenever we put it out, nobody watches it, and that's just bonkers. I just find it really confusing. Like Yajirobe from the Saiyan saga. He was pretty potent. I think he had a power level of like 900, like in the Saiyan saga, and he didn't train at all. Well, he did the bare minimum.
Yeah.
So he was still pretty strong.
And he was very important to that saga, which many people forget about when they mention, Goku's victory over Vegeta.
Yeah, of course. And then, of course, in the original Dragon Ball, Yajirobe's presence was key to Goku's survival. So Yajirobe, despite being incredibly lazy, always had a constant presence, which was always interesting.
Yep.
And I want to explore that in a different way. Like, if Yajirobe put his mind to things and just took training seriously, could he end up being actually stronger than Goku for a while? I mean, something to explore.
Yep.
And this will, of course, be a story, like many other stories, we will explore some more going into 2024.
Yep.
But we've been doing this for about 7 years at this point, going into 2024.
Yeah.
It's crazy. All of these stories. We've learnt a lot over the course of those years, and we have to thank you so much for watching all of it and hearing us out and pointing things out when we go a little bit too far, and the compliments along the way to show that we, might be on the right track.
Yep.
So that's just something that we really are appreciative of. I'm appreciative of your assistance on this.
Thank you. It's
And
always a
somebody to
pleasure.
bounce. Yeah.
Although, like, both our sanities are being tested when we write Tournament of Power or trying to figure out the way for Cell to get perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes we do find creative ways of not having to write the Tournament of Power.
But Cell is also tricky. I realized recently.
Yeah, trying to get Cell perfect, in the traditional way. And also there are also instances in some stories recently that I've wanted to find creative ways of not doing the Boo saga.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of opportunities to have the Boo saga end much earlier, because there are characters, Vegeta, that do end up causing it to happen when you get rid of them.
Once you get to Boo, you're golden, basically. Like you have Boo saga and early sections of Super are very flexible. but like
Yeah, they are.
But like Namek is fine, but like Cell Saga and TOP are, oh boy.
Yeah. Those are the ones that just drag.
At least
for both of us.
at least Cell Saga, like allows you to write Cell, which we both like. Writing different versions of Cell, but like
Oh yeah, no, writing for Cell, he's a breeze, but
Yeah.
it's just the act of getting to perfect Cell is the
Yeah,
tricky bit.
yeah.
But yeah, so that's our little retrospective. Thank you so much for listening to all of this. And be sure to look forward to all of our stories that we will be continuing with and maybe starting for the foreseeable future. Take care, folks, and we shall see you in the next video. Catch you later.
bye.